So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and it's been a little while I think since we last saw the ruins of OSGILIATH, and such an iconic map does deserve repeating a few times at least. And this is actually quite an interesting one because it's a 5v3, but it's not an overtly long one. Usually OSGILIATH is one of those maps which does produce quite a long fight because generally speaking there are a few chokes which do pop up around the map which do take the attackers quite a while to bypass. That may not be the case this time around, however, which leads me to believe the attackers are going to be extremely aggressive, which I think could make for a very interesting fight. We will also be seeing the Blood of Numenor defend the ruins of Osgiliath, with Gondor here of course, Arthedain backing them up, so the two sister kingdoms are here, but also the kingdom which birthed both of them in Numenor is also going to be taken to the field to try and help defend the city which they built. Going to be an interesting one, this, I feel. It was sent to me by Carmul, Lord of the Eastlings, who is one of the defending armies today, but we will be getting onto him and his allies a little bit later on. For now, we shall be going through the attacking armies, starting here on the western side of the river. The attackers over on this side often have an easier time because they're not funneled quite so much, and Osgiliath's crumbled walls means that you can really take advantage of your own skirmishes. And very often the attackers do take advantage of that, and it's what makes Osgiliath, one of the things that makes Osgiliath quite a difficult map to defend. We shall start over here with Diego Rio Ramos, who is going to be playing as Rhudaur. Rhudaur are relatively lightly armoured, their melee defense is not all that great, but they do have quite a lot of AP. Their javelins in particular are very, very deadly, but also a lot of AP in melee, which should make them a good choice for being on the attack against all three of the defending armies, who all rely on their armour to some extent. Dunman pikemen are a cheap unit of pikes, of course. In a 5v3 you're going to have to cut corners somewhere, and the Dunman pikemen are a good place to do it because yes, they're going to be horribly fragile against enemy arrow fire, but if you can get them into the front line, they will punch above their weight, they will help you anchor your line in place, which will be important against the superior quality of the western infantry they will be fighting. Blackwolds, however, a berserker unit, will be very good at trying to cleave through that armour that all the defenders will be utilising. They also need to watch out, however, for the arrow fire that's inevitably going to be coming their way. That will be how Rhudaur perhaps will come unstuck. We shall have to wait and see. Rhudaur swordsmen here in force as well, although perhaps not as much force as you may expect. This is actually a smaller scale battle now that I view it. It's not, the unit scaling isn't certainly not on huge or even on large actually, which may be why the battle is a little bit shorter than normal. So that's kind of interesting. We don't get to see unit scaling on this level all that often. Rhudaur swordsmen with only 103 men in the unit compared to the 200 that they get on the biggest settings. Rhudaur clansmen, much the same thing. Armour upgrade, bigger shields. They are one of the units that Rhudaur have which actually can take a bit of a beating at range and do so quite efficiently. But I highly doubt the defenders will be wanting to try and focus the Rhudaur clansmen down with arrows. They'll be trying to do it to other units. Arthedain pikemen are here as well, a much better version of the Dunman pikemen that they fight alongside. They have the shields as well. Just generally speaking, they always tend to perform well if you can get them into melee and really anchoring up your line. Dunman hunters, again, archers in this sort of situation on this side of the river of Osgiliath can be very, very useful. They're not the most damaging archers in the world, but they can still prove to be a bit of an annoyance for the defenders here. Some Ettenmoor's troll hunters, a unit of javelins. Not as many javelins as you might expect from Rhudaur, but they can hide quite a lot of units as well, which makes gauging how much strength they actually have out here a little bit more difficult from our perspective. And the Arthedain berserkers and the Witch Elf enslavers, two bodyguard units, both armour piercing in melee. The berserkers are a little bit weaker in melee, but they do have a throwing projectile as well. And they have a shield. The other army on this side of the river is going to be Isengard, played by Dutch Skink. I wonder if he's played any of the Warhammer titles with a name such as that. Uruk-hai Raiders, very, very similar to the Rhudaur swordsmen they're going to be fighting alongside on this side of the river. Not the best unit of infantry Isengard can field by a long shot, but they are affordable and offer you a bit of numbers, so you can play Isengard in a way more typical of the other Orcish nations if you want to rely on some of the lower end units such as this. More of the leather-clad Uruk-hai just in behind with the Uruk-hai archers. Again, a decent choice because of Osgiliath's lack of walls. More Uruk-hai archers, we've got some Dunlending clansmen, so a lot of lower end units that we're seeing initially here. A couple of units of them which could be used to zone out enemy cavalry as it moves forward. Uruk-hai infantry, of course, is the much more impressive unit of line infantry that Isengard can base their army around, much more common to see them as well because it is often worth paying the extra for them. Better armour, and they will perform better in melee against the infantry of the defenders, albeit against the likes of Gondor and Numenor, both of which have got plenty of armour-piercing options in melee. They may struggle a little bit there. Arthedain's infantry, however, will be a little bit will struggle a little bit more with the likes of the Uruk-hai infantry. Trolls of the White Hand here. Again, timing is everything with trolls, even with some of the bulkier ones like that. And also some champions of the White Hand. So not a bad choice this, because it makes sallying out for the defenders in this sort of situation a little bit less of an enticing proposition, which if I were the defender on this map, I'd be very tempted to sally out on this side of the river. So perhaps a bit of planning there from Isengard to try and stop that. We're not getting on to the defenders just yet. That comes later. Over on this side of the river we have Zago, who is playing as Mordor. Mordor, of course, attacking Osgiliath once again. Sauron's will, bit of armour piercing, does not go amiss against the kind of foe they are facing. We've got some Temple Executioners, a really strong unit of heavy swordsmen, albeit they, of course, cannot match up to the true Numenorians that are on the other side. Perhaps, I'm sure, Pharazim Swordmasters we shall be seeing later on. Olag-hai, Nazgul, and Uruk captains, so we have here a player who enjoys playing Mordor with all of their bodyguards on the field at the same time, which does impact the amount of units you can bring. Blackguard of Barad-dûr here, a couple of units of them. I do agree with this choice because forcing your way through the choke points on Osgiliath can be all important to your victory or your failure. And then also some Morannon infantry, some Orc maulers, which not a bad choice either. They're cheap, they die in droves, but the armour piercing will make a difference. And then over here a couple of units of Morannon archers as well, and that's pretty much that. Moving on to the army in the middle, which actually is already looking to attack the walls very, very quickly. We have Morris, who's playing as the Witch Realm of Angmar. Some Angmar Marauders are in here. We've got some Halberds, some Guardians of Khan Dûm with the armour upgrade. Both units of Trolls, the Blackwatch Legion, Snaga Stalkers are mixed in here as well. Scourge Raiders for a bit of a ranged punch as well. And then at the front we've got some Snaga Stalkers and some Orc Fellas who are going to be guiding the ram to its destination, and also some Witch Realm Hammerguard. Now, Angmar don't have that many units that can hide in the grand scheme of things, so I'll be interested to see if Morris really does jump the gun and decides to attack before his allies arrive. That might be a bit of a mistake. It might be exactly the sort of thing that the defenders are hoping for. And finally, some more evil men, this time the ones from the south. Harad, played by Grizzly Fox, champions of Nafrat. The worst nightmare for any faction that relies on armour, really, because they are a really, really good unit at cracking through that, much like the Witch Realm Hammerguard are on this side of the river as well. Really, really strong. Demons of the Desert. Osgiliath's fortifications might make it a little bit difficult to get them into an ideal position, but if you can, they're a really devastating unit of javelins. Muhad Beast Hunters, a standard unit of javelins as well, which can be very, very useful. Trollmen of Harad as well. Not surprising to see the Trollmen in great numbers against the kind of opposition the Harad are facing today. Haradrim archers, and there's some spearmen in there as well to bulk out the army. Muhad warriors, which I agree with this pick actually. Again, they're a numerous infantry unit, not too dissimilar to the Rhudaur swordsmen, the Uruk-hai raiders, and the like, a little bit more numerous actually. Their armour is obviously very poor because the Muhads don't really wear armour as such, but a numerous infantry unit, which when you're reliant on numbers in a 5v3 like this, is very, very important you don't neglect that too much. Muhad Beast Tamers for a phalanx, some upgraded Serpent Guard with some more rams back here, and some Southron archers, and that is all we can see of the attackers. So moving on to the defenders, starting off on the outer reaches of the defence. Kamul is playing, of course, as Numenor, as I said before. Big thank you to him for sending this battle replay in. Naruna Ari Royal Guard are over here. They'll be easily able to deal with any of the Rhudaur archers that we can see, and Isengard's archers, to be fair. Maybe not all at once, but I'm sure he's going to get a little bit of backup from his allies' skirmishers as well. Some Seafarers of Nindamos, some standard Gondor archers, Fear Wolfpack, playing as the Gondorians, so more skirmishers here. Some Numenorian cohort that should be just fine against the vast majority of units that are over here, unless Rhudaur send their bodyguard tier units forward. Then they might need a little bit of support against such a foe. Over here we do have a unit of cavalry by the looks of things. You know, standard Gondor cavalry, which you don't see an awful lot of. Hopefully in the next patch regular cavalry is made a little bit more impressive than it is currently, but as of now they're not going to do too well if they get entangled with the champions of the White Hand. But a trebuchet is also here. The Mithrandir's retinue, to be fair, they are a bodyguard tier unit of cavalry. They still want to avoid the champions of the White Hand like the plague, but they could be really useful for being an annoyance as the attackers move forwards. Veterans of Osgiliath are another unit that are really good in a skirmish fight, even when they are without their armour upgrades, as they are here. You can see the wounds still fresh on the veterans. We've got some Pelagia Marines, some Numenor Aru Sentinels, some Gondor Infantry, unupgraded as well, perhaps a sign of a newer player. Wolfpack, in the fact that he hasn't upgraded any of his Gondor units, even though Gondor get their armour upgrades very, very cheaply, and it is a real boon for them to utilise that. We also have some Numenorian Shield Guard in there, more Guards of Osgiliath, some Fountain Guardsmen, Nimlothian Honour Guards with plenty of armour-piercing spears when you factor in the Citadel Guard as well. More Fountain Guard, more Pharazim Swordmasters, a second unit of Nimlothian Honour Guard, and Gondor Infantry. So the vast majority of Numenor and Gondor's strengths found in this column here, which might be bad news for the attackers on this side of the river, but it does mean perhaps that there's going to be more needed to help marshal this front line over here. Son of the Dunedain playing as Arthedain, 2 units of Troll Slayers, some Seafarers over here, Evendim Spearmen with 1 level of armour upgrade, as well as some Numenorian Shield Guard, more cavalry as well, the Knights of Illuminus, the most impressive unit of cavalry we've seen so far from the defenders, and indeed Arthedain are the most cavalry focused of all the defenders that we can see. Evendim Spears, Numenorian Shield Guard, we've got some Dunedain Peacekeepers also, which will be really good at cleaving their way through the lightly armoured Orcs and Southrons that will be throwing themselves against these gates. Ardenheim Shadow Bows are also here. More Seafarers, so yeah, Numenor mixing in some of their strength over here. Dismounted Knights of Numenus, the Grey Company, so more cavalry. Some Pelagia Pikemen, or Pelagia Pikemen I should say. Gate Guards and more Pikes. Up here we've got some Wardens off the north, as well as some Pelagia Archers. More Pelagia Archers I believe, indeed. Another unit of Grey Company, so they're not afraid of going into the red limit on certain expensive units here, are the defenders. We'll see if that proves to be a good decision or not. The Grey Company are very capable of getting ludicrous amounts of kills if used correctly, so we'll have to wait and see. Arthedain Pikemen, I should say. We've got some Arthedain Marksmen as well. We've got some more Horse Archers from Arthedain with the Dunedain Scouts, and some Dunedain Rangers over here as well, and that's pretty much it, I believe. Just a cursory glance to see if I've missed anything. I'm sure a couple of units slipped under the net with everything being so chaotic. But yeah, I can't imagine there will be a particularly long cut in this battle. I imagine that the attackers are going to get right down to business very, very quickly. We shall have to wait and see though. But yeah, I'll make a little cut and we'll rejoin when the battle is beginning. So I must say, I am somewhat curious to see if Morris is going to move in ahead of his allies, because I do think that would actually start the attackers off on rather the wrong foot, considering that quite a lot of his units actually could be quite vulnerable to enemy missile fire, in that he's got some Orc fellas in there, he's got plenty of Scourge Raiders. Usually Angmar are quite robust against that sort of thing, but the Blackwatch Legion and the Guardians of Khan Doom are really the only thing that we can see from this perspective that Angmar have got that would be good at withstanding that kind of punishment. More to the point as well, you can see the Grey Company are also coming out here from Son of the Dunedain immediately to start attacking the Angmarin blob as it advances. They won't be able to get too many volleys off because the Trolls are going to rush forward to force them to retreat back behind the walls, but it's at least putting some pressure on Angmar as they decide to try and move forward. A little interesting to see what's going to be going on over here. Numenor and Gondor, of course, not really moving too much of their army before the deployment phase. So they're going to have to start reorganising themselves pretty quickly, and if the Gondorian player is new, it will be interesting to see how he handles the pressure of attackers moving forward. Gondor Archers actually moving down from the walls, which is quite interesting, and Isengard are going to be moving over to directly support Rhudaur, making the battlefield a little bit smaller for the attackers, which I find to be a little bit strange. Usually you want to really stretch the defenders in this part of Osgiliath so you can attack them as many angles as possible. If they all try and go through that one gatehouse there, even the lack of cover from the walls won't bother the defenders too much. I think they'll be quite pleased with that if they can get other infantry units over here to really help bulk out the defence. One unit of Cohort and one unit of Numenor Royal Guard is not going to be enough to secure victory in the field for them. The gates are actually still open, so the Trolls could try and keep those gates open. That is a risky thing, to go into that much infantry alone and without support. It's the sort of thing where Trolls will fall away pretty quickly against a higher tier Numenor infantry, and the gates could shut behind them as well, albeit now with infantry on the way forward to support them, that is significantly less likely. Interesting to see if there is actually a grace period going on here, or whether they just don't want to shoot at Angmar because they know so much of the Angmaran army pretty resilient. There's some Wards of the North in there, which, to be honest, could be already utilised to pretty good effect. They could already be in range, to be honest. There are the Witches here as well, something worth keeping your eye on. Missed them in the deployment phase, but they do have a tendency of blending in, especially when Angmar deploys in a big blob like that. The Hammer Guard and the Witches might be in range, though, and if they aren't, then they will very shortly be if they move forward with any sort of purpose. Rhudaur infantry moving forward from Mordor, so support is going to be forthcoming. So Morris did move forward, kind of, without support, but he didn't go all in. And the gates are starting to be battered down. So it's going to have to be Rhudaur that push up the rams, because I do believe Isengard have forsaken any sort of siege equipment like that. There's some Gondor cavalry waiting on the periphery to charge in. I mean, a couple of good charges would be a pretty good return for the Gondor cavalry, considering they are usually difficult to use, especially without the armour upgrade and without a shield. They can be remarkably fragile. Meanwhile, the archers now starting to do their thing. What are they shooting at, I wonder? Could be the Scourge Raiders, would be a worthwhile target. Even with the armour upgrade, they are going to be quite fragile. Even the Orc Maulers for the Balagire archers might not be the worst target either. No actual melee engagements just yet. Angmar do batter down that gate, and they are going to now move across to do the same with the other, only bringing the one ram. So slow and steady wins the race, which was not what I was expecting from a battle with this many frames in it. It only leads me to believe that the actual battle, when it does get underway, is going to be rather violent indeed. Yeah, Rhudaur are going to be moving in here, battering down that gate. There's so many rams over here, Rhudaur. Rhudaur could be the ones to go right around, but with that cavalry over there now, they might be less inclined to do that. I like this from Isengard, though. He sees the cavalry over there. He's going to send his Dunlending clansmen as a bit of a shield for the main army. Even more of an anti-cavalry bonus on them than just from regular militia spears. So while they may not be as cheap as the real trash that all the other Orc factions get access to, the Dunlending clansmen are a better unit for that utility. Don't expect them to do much in melee against other infantry, however. A couple of kills on those Scourge Raiders, Moran infantry. Are they going to be the first ones through the breach? They probably shouldn't be. A single unit of Numenorian cohort will make quick work of these very basic armour-clad orcs, but they are going to move in. And the first melee engagement on the battlefield begins. Heavy Numenorian infantry clashing with some outfitted orcs. Scourge Raiders are going to try and get in position to support, but this formation isn't deep enough for the axe throwers to be able to throw over them. So Numenor have no worries there whatsoever. Most they could hope for maybe is to try and get grazing blows on those Arthedain pikemen. Still a few arrows forthcoming. What are they actually going for, though? Are they in range of something juicy? They would be in range of the Witches if they were to notice them. I mean, they definitely shouldn't be going after the Blackguard of Barad-dûr. Basic archers are going to do next to no damage to a unit with a shield value that high. But yes, you can see now Gondor with several units getting ready to block Rhudaur and Isengard's progress. The other gate now falls from the front, so a slower progression from the attackers over here. But, yeah, Moran infantry really struggling against the Numenorians. The Numenorian archers continuing to shoot into the approaching attackers as they move across the river. Probably for the best that Harad are at the back. Much like Rhudaur, they don't really prioritise their armour too much. Nor their melee defense, really, but their armor piercing is impressive. Very similar factions in many ways.
The enemy's ram has breached the gates.
So finally we should be seeing the end of that little movie, that little cutaway. As the rams have done their work, another unit of Moran infantry moving forward, so they're just going to try and bludgeon their way through the Numenorian cohort. They will need a little bit of support, the cohort, if they're going to move forward this aggressively, the Orcs, but with a unit of Numenorian shield guard, slightly better mass on spears like this, going to be difficult to push your way through, and also Numenorian shield guard have got armor piercing as well, so they will be doubly effective in this sort of situation against the Orcs as they try to push their way through. Don't know what Arthedain hope to accomplish there, because after a little while, when there's more of a gap the Orcs have made in the Numenorian lines, that sort of charge could be effective, but at the moment all you're really doing is bumping into the back of your own men. The charge isn't really landing, so all they're really doing is acting as inefficient infantry. They're at least unlikely to perish that quickly. Arrows being launched over the wall now, goblin trackers from Angmar. doing this, getting a few kills through the gaps of the buildings there on some of the Dunedain Rangers. Anything you can do to put pressure on Rangers is going to be worthwhile. More arrows being sent over the walls, not particularly accurate. The amount of kills they get is going to be limited, but it will give the defenders something to think about, especially if they're targeting down these pikes. Some of the Haradrim actually coming forward now as well, the Muhards, and also some of the basic Haradrim units. So Balagai pikemen moving in, but once again, maybe a little bit of miscommunication here as the Lancers come down, but the Knights of Numenor not really able to get into a good position here. The Grey Company very much could, however. On the other side, less venom being put into this assault. Instead, they are going to try to utilise, I believe, their throwing projectiles. The Muhard Beast Hunters could be good at trying to soften up something like the Numenorian Shield Guard and Cohort. Yeah, and those are going to be good volleys. You can see there almost the entire front ranks of those spears falling before that javelin volley. Interesting to see if Kamul does notice that his units are being targeted in this fashion. Going after the Arthedain pikemen, which is actually kind of an interesting choice. I would perhaps in this situation prefer to go after the heavy Numenor infantry and leave the pikes for the Angmar axe throwers. Arthedain will notice this. I mean, they're taking good losses. This is good from the attackers to use your javelins in such an efficient manner. And now they're going to get kills on both units as well, trying to hide behind the Numenorians, but there you can see also the Grey Company now in position, going to be firing down the ranks, but the Trolls are on the way in. The Trolls could try and push their way through and go after the Grey Company perhaps. More on that in just a moment. Over on this side, artillery is flying. In fact, I think we will just go down to half speed for just a moment, just so we can get our bearings. Dunman Hunters firing over the walls. This is the sort of thing that you definitely need to be doing as the attackers. But artillery, ranged attacks flowing on this part of the battlefield. Uruk-hai Raiders, of course, struggling. The Guards of Osgiliath and the Citadel Guard just in behind, fighting on home turf, of course. The Guards of Osgiliath and basic Uruk-hai Raiders like this are not going to be enough to make your way through a prepared defence such as this. And indeed they do rout. In this sort of situation, I'm surprised that they've decided to narrow the battlefield like this, the attackers, but now that they have done so, they're going to need to attack with more than just one unit at a time, otherwise Gondor are going to be very, very confident and comfortable. Well, just one more look at the trebuchet as it rips through the Uruk-hai Raiders. Not the most efficient use of the trebuchet, but I'm sure that Isengard are going to be feeling the heat from this. Literally. Now then, back over here. Through the narrow gate, yeah, the attackers still struggling. They've done a little bit of damage to these Numenorian infantrymen, but not enough for this to have been worthwhile at all. And with the anchor being offered by the Balagai pikemen as well, it could be a long day at the office for the Haradrim and the Orcs from Mordor that have decided to try and push their way through here. This is a little bit more messy over here, which may suit the attackers a little bit more. Which Scourge Raiders throwing their axes in, and they're going after the Arthedain pikemen. So Evendim Spearmen thrown in for good measure. Evendim Spearmen will of course struggle against the Trolls, but the initial lines of Numenorian infantry have been scattered a little bit. This is a good opportunity for the attackers to move in and really support and consolidate their gains, because these Trolls won't last forever. Even though it is only Evendim Spearmen and Pikes on the way to support, although there are some elite infantry units coming forward now. Spears and Pikes will take quite a long time to bring down Trolls, especially militia spears. So you need some more infantry coming forward. That's exactly what the attackers are going to be doing now as well. Grizzly Fox sending forward some dismounted Serpent Guard to help out. They should be absolutely fine in this sort of situation. Seafarers are back there, still the Grey Company. The Royal Legion of Armenelos is going to be a worry, I'm sure. If they can get through these Numenorians, that would be a significant gain. Balagai archers up on the walls with their little ropes up there on their belts. There's still quite a lot on the other side of the river, so still the attackers will have a lot more that they can commit. So even with the setbacks they've suffered so far, all is most certainly not lost, but the defenders will be quite happy with how things have gone so far. Damage enough has been inflicted on them for it to be worthwhile. Orc Maulers, more Muhards moving forward, but still the line holds. Arthedain pikemen also in support of the Numenorians over here, acting in more of a supporting role so far, Arthedain, while Gondor and Numenor take the lead on both defences. Gondor infantry heading backwards, perhaps feeling so confident that they don't need their entire army over here. And Gondor do have some archers up on this wall as well. What are they going after? Gunman Hunters? Or are they going after these Uruk-hai Raiders? Yeah, it looks like the Uruk-hai Raiders, but the Archers, the Hunters, continuing to try and do some damage. And this is the problem the Gondor are going to be facing now. While it may only be low quality archers, and while almost all of their army really is going to be very nicely armoured, every bit of damage that they can do with their lower end archers here, the attackers, is going to add up. And by the late game, who knows where that can take them. Veterans of Osgiliath are over there, Gondor archers. They should perhaps engage in a skirmish fight over here, Gondor, because they would win it. Use their regular Gondor archers, maybe one of their veterans as well, to establish their dominance over the Dunman and the Uruk-hai. Meanwhile, still, this narrow gatehouse, Harad really not having the best of luck with pushing their way through there, especially not now with the Grey Company there. They're probably going to be racking up a tremendous kill count there. But there's more room to manoeuvre over here. This is where the attackers can really start to make their position in pay. Orc fellas are going to be going over there to try and help push through that part, that smaller gatehouse. The Blackwatch Legion are on the way forward. More Orc Maulers from Mordor. Scourge Raiders out of ammunition now getting into melee. So as scary an opponent as the Royal Legion of Armenelos are, they've taken some good territory here. Ooh, Witchers. Don't want to get too close to that just in case there is a crash. But yeah, the Witchers bisecting that position. It wasn't a devastating shot from the Witchers, but it is the sort of thing which is really going to help nail down their gains here. That's exactly the sort of thing the attackers need. This is going pretty well for them in this fight over here, and that's for the best because it's not going all that well for them in the other parts of the battlefield. Blackwatch Legion heading over here with Orc fellas, but they are routing the Numenor Gate Guards, backed up by a slew of Arnor militia, as they were. And there's also the Guardians of Khan Dûm, all of them shaken up, which is interesting. All of this good work might be undone if they all rout. They're going to need to continue pushing through the gatehouse as well. Trollmen of Harad are in there now, so at least in melee they'll be putting more pressure on. Grey Company pulling out their swords, so they could be running low on ammunition. One half volley perhaps remains. Orc fellas routing right through the dismounted Knights of Numenor. It's probably one of the worst decisions you could stand to make. Unlending clansmen are routing. Still the Gondor cavalry out here on the periphery. Looks like they've decided to try and move in. A few charges going on over here, something that we actually completely missed, charging in and out of the Dunlending clansmen. The Gondor cavalry was ultimately victorious, but it looks like they suffered for it. Right over here. Yeah, more Dunlending clansmen. I don't know what happened to the champions of the White Hand, but they should really be being utilised to tidy that Gondor cavalry up. It would be a simple enough task for them. Not sure what these guards of Osgiliath were thinking. They decided to try and come outside the walls and were almost immediately swallowed whole by the men of Rhudaur that were waiting for them. And more troll hunters and Rhudaur swordsmen there. But it is over here where the battle is now simmering away nicely. Ruhard warriors, Angmar marauders damaged, but the trollmen taking point, putting real pressure on this front line now, and with more than just one direction to try and hold, things are getting a little bit more complicated for the defenders here. Guardians of Khan Dûm fighting hard. Seafarers and Lindamos are there as well, but are they stabilising over here, the defenders? Kind of. Haradrim spearmen moving forward, plenty of numbers forthcoming, but the only real quality there is going to be the dismounted Serpent Guard, and they can't really hold a candle to the level of Numenorian infantry they're facing off against. Arthedain pikemen coming back. Haradrim archers are there. Guardians of Khan Dûm could move forwards, potentially. There, a Seafarer taking on a Serpent Guardsman. Seafarer's decent in melee, but you'd definitely give the edge to the Serpent Guard between the two. Seafarer getting bloody, taking another hit. So the Haradrim officer over there using the Murakumo model from Dark Souls. I recognise that. Ooh, and there's another Witcher volley. Not the most devastating thing, but there's only one of them left alive. He has the opportunity to continue to grill that unit of Arthedain pikemen, so only one volley from the Witchers before they were targeted down by the archers. If they can get a few more volleys on that Arthedain pike unit, then maybe the attackers will be okay with that. Now artillery also on the way, the trebuchet, the rotting meat being deployed. Not sure who that will benefit more though. Depends what way the battle starts to swing could prove to be a bit of a mistake to do that. Pelagia Marines firing their javelins in. The Dunman pikemen, not a bad target, I suppose. Many of the javelins, though, being blocked by the carcass of the ram. Rodram javelins are moving in. Much more venom being put into this attack now by the attackers. Rhudaur and Isengard deciding to throw a bit of caution to the wind and try and go through Gondor like this. I'm not sure how effective this is going to be, though, with Fountain Guard, Nimlothian Honor Guard, Citadel Guard. Lots of really good units for holding the line. Gondor will definitely win the quality stakes. There is a bit of support coming in from the archers from the side. Still, Gondor being a little bit more reluctant to use their archer ammunition, which is a little bit of a strange one. A little bit strange to try and marshal so much of your strength till the end in that manner. How are the trollmen doing? The trollmen are... No, those are Muhard warriors. They can't be doing that well because there's not that many of them left. 16. There's not that many defenders left holding this gatehouse now. There are Arthedain pikemen, a few Belagaya. Bit of friendly fire there from those troll slayers. Trying to push their way through over here as well. Arthedain starting to turn up the heat a little bit more now, though, with troll slayers and peacekeepers being committed to the fight. And they are starting now to push. Hello. Going after the Belagaya archers, continuing to get kills with those witches. What's going on over here? Demons of the Desert. Lots of routing going on now thanks to the trebuchet. The rotting meat here lowering the morale of all the units, but also direct hits from the artillery. Demons of the Desert moving in, but also immediately getting targeted down by the Grey Company. So for a while it was looking pretty good for the attacks over here, but I do believe the defenders have managed to largely stabilise things. Another shot from the Witcher. That was a really good one from just a single Witcher remaining, doing a lot of damage there to the Gondor infantry. More trollmen coming forward. Are the attackers going to run out of steam here before they're able to really make this stick? I think they probably will. I think now that Arthedain are starting to commit a little bit more forward, you can tell they're starting to struggle. And these Muhards are not gonna do the business. There's still a few units across the way from Mordor. All the bodyguard stuff, but if it's the bodyguard stuff without any support around them, the defenders won't be too concerned by that, I don't think. We shall have to wait and see. Numenorian cohort over here as well, so a bit of Numenor support potentially. I mean, Gondor are starting to push outside the walls, which might not actually be the best thing for them, getting a little bit too far ahead of themselves. Perhaps this is where Isengard and Rhudaur can start to make things, or start to mount a bit of a comeback, perhaps, for the attackers, as the rain continues to fall. But they need a bit of quality on this front line if they're going to be able to do that. I'm a little bit surprised to not see any there they are, the Nazkai. They need to be moving forward, getting onto the front line, as well as some of the upper end Rhudaur units. I mean, the Black Walls will certainly help, but I'm thinking more along the lines of the Berserkers and the Enslavers. More pikes wouldn't go amiss either. Dunlanding Clansmen. Yeah, they're starting to squeeze in from the sides a little bit. They're quite fortunate it's only basic Rhudaur units that they're really fighting at this stage. Sort of thing they'll be very good at, but with Uruk-hai pikes and Black Walls on the way forward, who knows? It could start to tilt in their favour just a little bit. Meanwhile, still moving forward. Grey Company shooting through the gap, the Blackguard of Barad-dûr moving forward, but at this stage, their strength has been taken from them so much that I'm not sure, like maybe they should have committed the Blackguard a little earlier, and it would have had better results. When they were getting pressured from that side, the defenders, that may have been the moment to send the Blackguards through this gate as well, and you could have started to see the dominoes fall, but as it is, I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to do that. This attack over here completely falling apart. Defenders able to reorganise themselves. I always say it's never a good sign when an attack completely falls apart. You have to start again from your beginnings. Sauron's Will on the way forward. Goblin Trackers. I mean, just a single unit of Sauron's Will, and they're also getting shot on the way forward. They're shaken. Takes a bit to shake the Sauron's Will up. There's still some Arthedain pikemen over there. Ooh, and they're going to get charged as well, I think. Can the charge land? No, they just sort of bumped clumsily into the Sauron's Will there. That won't be great for the Knights of Anubis if those axes start to swing. But they rout. Yeah. The hits from the body-piercing projectiles there doing the business. Now then. let's move over here, shall we? Because I think more and more it's looking like this is going to have to be where the attackers try and win this battle, with Gondor getting maybe a little bit big for their boots and coming outside the walls to engage Rhudaur and Isengard. That might be their way back into the fight, but even then it's going to be tough for the attackers from this moment. And still Gondor going to be doing some damage. Units over there. And the Royal Guard are on the way back. Veterans of Osgiliath getting into melee. I mean, they're decent in melee as well. Just continuing to try and crank up the pressure on those units as we have a little look. What do they still have in reserve over here? The defenders, enough certainly, with the Pharazim Swordmasters and the dismounted knights. I mean, a lot of the other stuff is fairly basic. Woods and North isn't, but it's either basic or depleted. So it's not as if the attackers are completely out of it, but it's just going to be difficult. Moran archers moving forward with the Blackguard of Barad-dûr. The Gondorians defending their homeland, and they will certainly fancy their chances against just basic Moran archers in melee. Arrows flowing overhead. That's where the Arthedain shadow bows can come into their own with their really good armour values as far as rangers go. The Trebuchet crew already proving to be a good addition in this battle, and the crewmen themselves will now join the defence. Balagai archers here also. Dunedain rangers are there. What's going on there? Haradrim archers moving in. I mean, they have noticed the Arthedain pikemen at the very least, so they're not going to be able to hide now. And you would imagine, I mean, it might take more than just 31 Moran archers, but eventually this pocket of resistance is going to be brought low. Forward come the Hammer Guard. Might be a bit too little too late this. Not enough quality. Like, there was a moment in this battle where the attackers could really have put the defenders under the cosh with their elite units with a little bit more pressure, but I think they may have missed that boat. And more it's looking like a difficult task for them. Dunedain peacekeepers facing off against the Sauron's will here under these archers. The peacekeepers doing a good job so far. Champions of Nathrat on the way forwards, but being targeted down by the Dunedain troll slayers as they do so. The best of the troll men being killed by the troll slayers, and they just whipped out their axes as well, so softening up the champions of Nathrat. In come the Knights of Numenor. That was actually some Arthedain shadow bows that were routing. They're going to have enough quality to deal with the champions of Nathrat as well, as scarier units they are. Witchram Hammer Guard as well over here. Not a huge amount of quality over here, just a basic unit of line infantry and pikes that the defenders have laid on for the attackers. But well organised. And support will be forthcoming if they need it to be. Dunedain Rangers continuing to fight down, or shoot down there. Or at captains down there. So Mordor's bodyguard units are starting to move forward. I mean, we're into the final 10k frames. I'd say it's the final phase of the battle as well, but I feel as though this battle has just been one long phase. The defensive positions haven't really changed all that much, and by the time a victor is decided on all of them, that will be the battle's end. But you can see here, it's continuing to move outwards, and not great for Gondor. They've gone into the welcoming arms of Rhudaur and Isengard continuing to commit forward some of their stronger units of Uruk-hai. And Numenor coming forward to try and bail them out a little bit. Some seafarers and some cohort trying to help the Gondorians, but yeah, definitely a sign of a newer player, but it's making the battle a little bit more interesting, because it does give the attackers a bit more hope than they otherwise would have. Certainly the Crown of Iron Berserkers will be helping on the front line as well. Bodyguard tier, armour piercing, all the stuff you want. Bit of support coming in from the surviving archers that have ammunition as well. Like the cavalry for Gondor has been completely extinguished. While over here they still have some Olag-hai out here, but that is really the only thing, unless I think this is a routing unit, indeed it is. So the Olag-hai, the only thing that hasn't been committed in fully yet over here for the attackers. So last roll of the dice really for them. If they can make something happen over here, it really will give Rhudaur and Isengard the belief that they can still make something happen. If they cannot, however, then they will struggle. And I think the quality of their units overall, they don't have enough support for the bodyguard units they still have. And I think that will ultimately be the attackers' undoing over here. Hammer Guard getting bloodied over here. Meanwhile, Goblin trackers routing. Temple executioners moving forward, as are the Uruk captains. They'll do nicely with their armor piercing in melee against cavalry that are being exposed like that, but Dunedain troll slayers moving in. Those Dunedain battle axes will cleave through that, by Orcish standards, good armor. There goes the Gondorian general. Again, that overconfidence proving to be his downfall. There are Nazgul moving in, they're pursuing units. The executioners and the champions of Nathrat fighting side by side. It's interesting that they say that, because it's certainly not because of their forces that are left over here, the attackers. The defending announcer not fancying their chances still, factoring in all of the strength that Rhudaur and Isengard still have. Trebuchet crew. You can tell it's them because Gondor hasn't got any other armour upgrades, so it's just them that have the iconic Gondorian full plate. The trolls getting a little bit bloodied. I mean, all they can really do is try and do as much damage as they possibly can. Southron archers firing away, and hope that the announcer's misgivings about the situation for the defenders prove to be accurate. Shadow bows moving in. I mean, they are starting to take losses over here, the defenders, but the attackers are still losing quite a lot for this as well. I don't believe they're going to have enough. I mean, they might. Fountain Guard are moving back. Wolfpack, I think, finally realising the situation, deciding to retreat. Dunlending Clansmen. So they still have a little bit. Some trolls. Champions of the White Hand, if things open up within the settlement, could yet prove to be a pretty effective unit indeed. And, well, it depends. There's still quite a lot of pikes actually, so that might not be the best thing. Troll Slayers. We've got over here Demons of the Desert. One Demon of the Desert. I mean, he's going to continue to throw javelins in. He'll do damage, but maybe not at the rate that the attackers need him to. Harad General killed by the Numenorians. There are some Swordmasters over there. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. The Troll Slayers showing their abilities off in melee. They're going to hunt down the Demon of the Desert that remains and his banner carrier. And there we go. It's going to be the end for them. And they're also going to continue to finish these guys off. The Olag High, to be fair, the Olag High and the Hammer Guard doing quite well for themselves over here. The lack of quality on this front line actually proving to be a little bit of a problem. There is the Angmar General. There goes the Mordor General. Generals falling left, right and centre now, which is going to be a real concern for the attackers because their morale is going to be completely extinguished. Pharazim Swordmasters will be exactly the sort of thing which will deal with the Olag High in short order. And now they're going to have to reposition themselves. And here we go, look. Numenor moving back. Gondor may well have thrown this battle for his team, which would be most unfortunate. Because Rhudaur and Isengard do still have enough left to be a problem, and they have got some quality into over here. I mean, a lot of it is basic, ranging from the Dunlending Militia to the armoured Uruk-hai, but they do still have some genuine units of quality. The Champions of the White Hand do catch the eye. The Nazkai, they still have the Enslavers, I'm pretty sure, as well. Arthedain Pikemen, so the pike advantage belongs to the attackers now. This will be a most painful lesson for Gondor if the defenders do go on to lose this, because they really were in the ascendancy for a while, the attackers. Looking a little bit less cut and dry now. Dunedain Troll Slayers moving forward. They are running down what remains over here. Angmar General falls. Pharazim Swordmasters. I mean, they need to get all of these units ready to face the oncoming threat. Everything they have. Maybe they should bank up on the TC. So this is actually the final phase. It'll be a short final phase, but there you go. Shadow bows. Naru Naharu Royal Guard getting into position to shoot down these streaks, try and soften up the enemy as much as they can before they arrive. matter what they hit at this point. They just need to try and do as much damage to the attackers that still remain as they possibly can. Rhudaur swordsman leading the way. The trolls are there. It's going to be an interesting one, this. I'm not really sure how to call this. Going into the last stages. Another good replay. Arrows. I mean, yeah, the pikes are probably the thing you want to be going after if you can. But you can't afford to be too fussy at this stage if you're going to stick yourself out in front of your infantry line like this. They will need to get back behind some cover because the enslavers are here. And they will do plenty of damage to these heavily armoured Numenor spears. Organisation may be everything for the defenders, and I'm not sure whether that was the best. What's going on here? I'm not sure where they're going here, the Gondorians, because the town centre is right here, so defending that little it would be kind of neat if the town centre was in there, rather than in this little open courtyard, but it isn't. You need to defend the ground that the game says you should. The Belagai are holding on. They're going to need the support from the other front line, however, and they're going to need it quickly.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Javelins from the seafarers. Doing the business. And then over here, the champions of the White Hand are going to go and charge in over here. I wouldn't recommend it, and indeed they do stop. Fountain Guard, the trebuchets with their spears. More Fountain Guard. Dunedain scouts getting around the enemy. As well as this little Arthedain force as well, but those Dunlending clansmen are breaking. That may be a big difference maker here. A lot of the lower end units the attackers still have probably won't stick around for the fight, and that may still give the edge to the defenders going into crunch time, as it were. Rhudaur pikemen fighting hard. The trolls barging their way through the pike line, for the troll slayers getting in. Both units of troll slayer to remain, although I say that one actually decides to go the other way, seeing the Isengard are getting around the defences. The Troll Slayers will intercept the Uruk-hai infantry. Definitely a good fight for the Dunedain, that. In come the champions of the White Hand, though. If they can get a couple of good charges off, that will be victory for the attackers. Uruk-hai infantry. Dunedain scouts are still running around. I mean, they could get some rear charges as well. They won't be fantastic at it, but could be the sort of thing which induces some routing. And that could be all important at this stage. He's going to get a rear nudge more than a rear charge. They need to be careful about doing that, though, because those are pikes. When they turn around, the champions of the White Hand will start to fall away pretty quickly, so they need to be cycled out of there in double quick time. And indeed, that is what's happening now. Rhudaur pikemen blocking the way forward from all of those supporting units. Isengard now, I mean, it is going to be dependent on Isengard's strength whether the attackers can seed themselves over the line here or not. Where are the Nazkai? Oh, there they are. 28 Nazkai remaining. Enslavers, 30 of them remaining. These bodyguard units might be the difference here between victory and defeat. The Dunedain Troll Slayer starting to get overwhelmed a little bit by all the Uruk-hai that are around them. There's still Pharazim Swordmasters and the like, who are trying to finish off what remains of these Rhudaur swordsmen. They should be able to do so fairly quickly. Will it be quick enough for them to support their fellow defenders? I'm not sure whether it will be, because this defence is starting to look like it's been crushed underfoot really by Isengard. And that will be a concern. I think Arthedain see the severity of the situation. They know they need to try and get in there, so they're going to have to try and go through the Rhudaur pike defence that Rhudaur has laid on for them. Still the Numinous gate guards. The marksmen are going to try and continue to shoot as well, but it may be in melee they don't really have an answer for the Nazkai or the enslavers at this point, and all of the support around them is going to make life pretty difficult for them. The Narinaru Sentinels being largely surrounded and bypassed, so it is actually looking, for all of their decent work on the river crossing, the defenders, Gondor's overconfidence may well have cost them the entire battle. In come the champions of the White Hand, getting a charge into the Pharazim Swordmasters, by far the best way they can deal with them at this point in time. They don't really want to be having to deal with them in melee. The Numinous Gate Guard's on the way. I'm surprised the trolls are still alive, actually. Mostly it's spears and pikes that are over here in melee, I suppose, so that goes to explain that. But yeah, the attackers, they are going to win. It looked for all the world like they were going to struggle horribly about halfway through the fight. But they took advantage of the way that Gondor approached this battle, and they are ultimately going to capture the ruins of Osgiliath. It was a close one, but they did pull away in the end. Flaming shot being utilised by Arthedain, that's a sign of desperation as well. They're going to try and rout the lower end units, try and take away the support, and then hopefully build from there. Still those Fountain Guard are in there, not really achieving all that much. And indeed the Witchhelm Enslavers punishing them for trying to hide away in the corner. Trebuchet crew getting cleaved in twain by those tridents that the Enslavers wield. Nazkai now hounding the Arthedain units. The Pharazim Swordmasters, they have largely surrounded this unit of Rhudaur pikemen at this point, so they will probably end up winning this fight. They will be bogged down for a little while longer yet. There is one Nazgul that remains. And there goes Ar-Pharazôn with his golden Pope hat. And there go the champions of the White Hand, and yeah, they have been very decisive here in the late game. They've been used pretty well by Dutch Skink, and the defenders had no real answer to them. There are the Enslavers, Uruk-hai infantry. Trolls of the White Hand continuing to do their thing. The rain continues to fall, and it is a dark day for Osgiliath. The land of their people has fallen into enemy hands. Maybe not quite the enemy they were expecting. Oof. It is a wicked looking sword design, the Berserker / Nazkai weapon. There are the Wardens of the North, but not in enough numbers anymore to make any great difference on the outcome of this battle. Rhudaur pikemen, 62 of them. Yeah, Enslavers coming over to help finish them off. And it is going to be the Wardens of the North that are the last ones standing. The Steel Bowmen being charged by the Rhudaur Swordsmen. And that is going to be that. It's always interesting when someone sends a replay where they were on the losing side. I like that. Because it was a good battle and it was worth showing. It's been a good long while since we've seen the ruins of Osgiliath as well. At least on this channel. In come the Enslavers, and that surely is going to be that. One Warden remains. The blows continue to rain down upon him. He's getting... oh, there he goes. Not actually the last one left then. No, indeed not. It is the General who is the last one. He's still alive. He's going to get back up after having his spine snapped by one of those trolls. Yeah, and there we go. A brutal kill. And there we go. Yeah, within 3%. A good battle indeed. And in the end, the attackers took advantage of some overconfidence, and that was the difference between victory and defeat, because Arthedain and Numenor did very well on the river crossing defence, and they would have been feeling pretty good about their chances. But unfortunately, Gondor deciding to go outside the walls in that fashion. Definitely the sort of thing you do see new players doing when they set up defences like that. They set up a line, but they allow it to push forward. And that is just something you get used to counteracting. But yeah, that was the reason why the defenders ultimately lost. Because if not for that, they would have won. They were in a good commanding position. And yeah, they would have been victorious had it not been for that. Let's see what did the damage though for Kamul's army. The Pharazim Swordmasters with a fairly average performance by their standards. Royal Legion did okay. Arthedain Shadowbows, I mean, it is worth saying that they are smaller units this time around. Arthedain Shadowbows with 136 kills, 160 on Shield Guards. Yeah, it was the standard Numenorian units really, upper end though they may be, that did most of the heavy lifting, but then that was what they opened up with really. on their defence of the main river crossing. So yeah, the attackers winning here for the Osgiliath ruins. So big thank you to Carmul, Lord of the Easterlings, for sending this battle replay in, and big thank you to all of the players as well for being a part of this battle as well. So, as far as what's going to be coming up in the near future, the next battle replay that I do will be another scenario made by Morris. It's going to be another Dwarven siege. I mean, I technically already recorded the intro for it before I did this battle replay, so I know what's going to be coming up, but I will be doing that after. I wanted to give at least a little bit more space between the last Dwarven siege and that one, because they are fairly similar. But you'll see about that. It's going to be another long battle as well, another juicy one to get your teeth into. As well as there's going to be a few more replays I've got in the pipeline as well. I've got Merlond, I've got Umbar, that sort of thing. So the replays continue to flow, which is good. The recording schedule that I've got at the moment is a little bit odd. What I hope essentially to do is to keep up the current pace as best I can until not the current off-call period that I'm on, but the next off-call period from work. And then I will probably be having a little bit of annual leave where I will have maybe a couple of days extra that I can use to really record in bulk and hopefully set myself up for the rest of the summer and early autumn, which that will be really useful because it is the summer and sort of into September where I will be at my my busiest. So I really want to make sure that all of the recording and stuff is done pretty far in advance, just in case I'm not able to record for a month or even longer on end, just to be sure. And it's good that I've got basically a month's worth in advance already, so that I can continue to build on that. It will put me out of sync me with the comments a little bit, really, because I would have recorded these so far in advance that it won't be really fresh in my mind. But it is kind of necessary, at least at this moment. The positive to this is I shouldn't be this busy for some time again. So it is what it is. It might be the sort of thing where I do another live stream channel update at some point later on in the summer, maybe in August sometime, to sort of explain how I've gone about things and how things will perhaps be being made a little bit less intense as we get into autumn and winter, and hopefully when I get my new system as well, we'll be able to add a bit of Rise of Mordor in there, and perhaps even some Bannerlord as well. At least that's the loose plans that I have at the moment. But plans are fragile things, so we can't put too much stock in that. For the time being, the channel will continue in the fashion that it has done for the last few months. So yeah, I can't think of really anything else that I have to say other than that. Big thank you to Carmel once again, and all of the players for this battle replay. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.